I love it when they say, this can't be done, or the last three guys couldn't get it done. They couldn't do it. Nobody can do it. To me, that's like, all right, game on.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the show that cuts through the clutter to spotlight leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. This isn't about buzzwords or theories. It's about bold decisions, solving challenges, and the strategies driving industries that matter. I'm Jim Weaver, CEO of the Owner Group. In every episode, we get real about what it takes to turn vision into action and obstacles into opportunities. Let's go.
Today's a big day on Real Leadership. We're kicking off season 2, launching our new YouTube channel, and recording in our brand new Real Leadership studios. But more important than all that, I'm very excited to speak to our guest, Matthew Milas, President of Defense and Space at Honeywell Aerospace. Matt leads a portfolio that spans land, sea, air, space, and cyber technologies, serving both U.S. and international customers. With over 20 years of leadership in the aerospace industry, Matt has held senior roles at major organizations, including L3Harris Technologies, where he served as Vice President of Operations for the Space and Airborne Systems segment. Prior to that, he was Vice President and General Manager of Defense Aftermarket Business at Raytheon Technologies, Collins Aerospace, and Executive Director of 787 Program Management at Spirit AeroSystems. Matt holds a bachelor's degree in Industrial and Operations Engineering from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in International Economics and Development from Eastern Michigan University. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Jim. Glad to be here.
Well, let's start big picture. Everybody knows the name Honeywell. I don't think many people understand the scope of the Honeywell business. It's an international conglomerate. So would you kind of paint the macro picture of Honeywell and then explain where your business unit sits in that larger organization?
Yes, absolutely. So usually when people are hearing about Honeywell, they immediately think about thermostats or fans. And we do neither of those. Honeywell, as an overall organization, is broken up into 3 megatrends. One is on automation, which is for both building and industrial automation. So think about how buildings do heating, ventilation, air conditioning, all the systems that connect into it, lighting, and security. There's also an energy transition that deals with transitioning from petrochemicals to other forms of energy, cooling, and refrigerants, so a lot of chemical and chemical processing. And the third megatrend that we're organized around is aerospace technologies, which is broken around commercial, so air transport, think Boeing and Airbus, the business and general aviation, so Gulfstreams, Bombardiers, Embraers, and then the defense and space business, which covers all of our military applications, which range from the depths of the oceans to far reaches of space, submarines to satellites, and everything in between. So amongst all of those, I've got the most exciting area, being defense and space, and especially with all the capabilities we provide, not just to the United States, but to all of our allies across the globe.
Double click on that. You are over space and military sector of that. So expand a little bit on what you guys, what you do for a living, and also give us a sense of the scope, because that's a big operation.
It's absolutely huge. So our defense and space business is roughly $6 billion business annual turnover that we work with pretty much every single OEM that's out there that provides defense equipment, everything from land vehicles. We provide navigation and guidance systems. We provide engines and APUs that go into trainers and other aircraft, satellite communication systems, avionics, all sorts of things that go into the safety systems, environmental control systems, mechanical systems that control actuators, wheels and brakes, to the navigation guidance systems that go into all of our missile defense systems. So when you think about missile defense networks, Honeywell is inside, and we have the most advanced inertial navigation guidance systems that go into GPS and what we call INSS, inertial navigation systems that can help provide the precision needed, not just for the offensive systems, but mainly for defensive missile systems that can shoot other missiles out of the sky. So that capability and that technology is used pretty much by all of our allies. And we have the largest amount of those systems out there supporting those products.
You guys had a really good year last year from what I read. And you just came on, you've been in your role for 2 years now. Is that correct?
Yes, 2 years. So I picked up the business back in 2023, and we were roughly a $4.6 billion business at that time. And closing out 2024, we're ending at about $6 billion. So we've seen some significant growth in there. A lot of the organic growth, it's really a lot of the demand that's out there between the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. But really, it's been a growth in just the need and demand for defensive capabilities and strengthening the arsenals that are out there. And the technology that we provide, like I said earlier, goes to all of our OEMs, goes to all of our allies. And there's a greater need and a greater demand. So the trick of getting that growth was not just partnering and working together with all of those OEMs and all of those ministries of defense, but really, how do we deliver more? How do we increase the capacity of what we've been producing and getting it out to those customers faster to provide for those needs? So a lot of the effort over these last couple of years has been changing the shape of what we do and how we do it, but also increasing how much we can do every year to support them.
How do you see your industry evolving over the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, the defense industry writ large is facing some unprecedented times, both with the level of demand that's out there to stock up capabilities in case there were a pure level opponent competition, but also the dynamics that we've experienced in Ukraine in particular is really changing the shape of how the battlefield is being fought. When you see drones, first-person view drones going out and you spend a few $1,000s and those drones can take out tanks or surface-to-air missile sites or radars that cost tens of millions of dollars. It really changes the way you think about how do you operate. You can think back to the early 2000s with counter-terrorist and insurgency. We really had to change the way that we operated. You had to go to MRAPs. You had to go to V-shaped holes. You had to counter the IEDs that were being used. So the entire industry has to think about how is unmanned going to be a part of that? How are the unmanned land, maritime, air systems going to operate? And how do we defend against those? We may not choose to have them fully autonomous. We may choose to have a person in the loop so that you don't have the unintended consequences. But our adversaries might not be so morally obligated to do that, and you may have more autonomous systems just completely out there operating as for a defined mission, which could get very, very dangerous if left unchecked.
Do you feel like the U.S. is where it needs to be in that adjustment? Are we a little bit behind the curve? It feels to me like perhaps we're a little bit of a reactionary position to that. What's your sense of that? I'm not an expert. You are.
The challenge with the defense industry is we're fighting the last war. And so you're basing what you're doing now based upon what the last war was. You're not basing it on what the next war is going to be. You try to do some of the predictions and analysis and modeling simulation to predict it. But the inventory and the fleets that you have are based upon what you needed. Where things are shifting, there's a lot more interest and a lot of these new starts coming up that are bringing novel ideas, bringing that connected Internet of Things to the battle space, trying to look at more affordable mass that can be used to counter a near peer adversary. So it is starting to shift, but with the way that systems and procurement regulations are set up, it's almost designed to be bureaucratic and lethargic, so that it doesn't go too fast. When it does go fast, it's that wartime tempo. I'll tell you, the Ukrainians don't necessarily follow that same type of path. They will take things, they will try it out, they will adapt, and if it doesn't work, they'll throw it out and grab something else and try again. That's not the way that we operate when we're not at war. But if we were to go to war, that we'd have to make those same kind of very rapid acquisitions and very rapid changes to be able to meet the threats.
obviously the advent of large language learning models, AI, robotics. A lot of people think we're right at the base of a hockey stick acceleration in the use of those things. What are you seeing in your industry using those tools, that new technology? Do you think we're right there? Is it more of a couple years, the next couple of years, or is it more of a 10-year time horizon when that stuff really becomes a major part of the theater of war?
Yeah, I think it is going to take several years to get there. The technology is developing. We're fielding, different systems as test beds. Many prototypes are in the works right now. We're doing it on the commercial side as well of looking at advanced air mobility, the eVTOLs for urban transport. We're looking at how do you get it from having a pilot or having multiple pilots to having a reduced crew operation using autonomy and AI to help augment what the pilots are doing, so there's less workload and they can be able to manage it with a single pilot, all the way to getting it down to no pilots in the future. It's kind of a scary thing when you're the traveling public, and if you don't see a pilot up there, you might get really nervous. On the military side, however, you don't really get that choice, right? You're given orders, get on board this, the AI drone can fly you there. So I actually think on the military side, it will advance a little bit faster because you don't have FAA or EASA regulations that make it a little slower. And I think you'll see it more starting in the logistics realm, where you have to transport either equipment or troops to the field or in theater, or you have to exfil. You have to take people out or medevac, and you'll be able to use more autonomy to get troops and supplies in and out of different locations, and it would reduce the risk by having an autonomous pilot as opposed to a human flying into those environments.
I mean, that's been the historical pattern. The military in times of war has driven technology, driven that change in a lot of ways. I mean, they've been on the front end because, like you mentioned, the life and death dynamic, you have to adapt quickly to that. That's interesting. What's the challenge your industry is facing right now? What's a significant challenge, something that maybe is not being talked about that you're wrestling with?
Well, the challenge is, unfortunately, something we are talking about, which is capacity. The entire supply base is, for the defense industrial base, is challenged. It's challenged in the sense of just having enough production capacity, castings, forgings, bearings. Fortunately, we're pretty much out of the woods on the microelectronics shortages that were happening, but there's still just not enough. We've made significant recoveries. Electronic systems are definitely doing a lot better than more the mechanical types of systems, where it's a lot more consolidated and the numbers of suppliers that you can go to. And it's really about how long does it take to get a certified or qualified material for a certain process. We're talking very, very unique forgings and castings that require very specific manufacturing processes. So you can't stand those up overnight. So there's a lot of that capacity drain, and being able to ramp up. People talk about the Boeing and the Airbus backlog of number of aircraft to be produced. They're taking orders for the 2030s. That's if you place an order now, you won't be getting airplanes till then. Military is the same. We use a lot of the same supply base. In fact, most of our Honeywell technology is commercial derivative. It comes from commercial sources, and we use a lot of the same commercial suppliers that we do. So when you think about it, there's all that demand on the commercial side, and there's all that demand on the defense side, and it's all funneling down to not as many suppliers as you would think producing and providing that, which causes that whole constraint to the end developers, whether it be a Raytheon, a Lockheed, Boeing, being able to produce what they need is contingent upon us producing what we need, which is contingent upon our suppliers being able to do all the way back to the raw material. And all of that is constrained. So we've actually been spending hundreds of millions of dollars to increase our capacity, our suppliers' capacity. We have our employees located at the suppliers actually turning wrenches and helping produce parts. That's the level that we have to go to. And we're investing in developing new engineers. STEM investment down to the grade school level to get more people excited and energized to be in manufacturing for aerospace and defense applications in the future. So it's a industry-wide endemic that we are trying to solve. And I think if you listen to any of the other companies that are our peers, they're struggling with the same things of workforce and supply chain challenges is what we're trying to work through.
Finding experienced, vetted aerospace contract workers ready to work with highly specialized skill sets isn't easy. Onan Aerospace can help with a wide pool of the best talent, attracted through our superior benefits. To learn more, visit onanaerospace.com.
Are a lot of your suppliers foreign? Is that a challenge, or is it's a domestic base? You just need a bigger domestic base.
We source globally, but we have been shifting more to source in the United States. We've been standing up additional suppliers in the United States. And so when we see that we have any fragility in our supply base, we look to add an additional source of supply. We've been investing heavily in moving more of those sources into the U.S. We have some suppliers, for example, in Taiwan, that we're working with them to develop sources of supply in the United States to make sure that we have the continuity of supply and a local, closer to us source of supply. So there are a lot of those types of things that we're working with across the board as we reduce our exposure to single sources that we have limited control or influence on to more in-sourced or locally sourced solutions that we have more involvement, more engagement, and more opportunity to help influence. And we'll continue to make those investments.
Why aren't there more? If that demand there, and I've now that you mention it, I mean, I hear all the talk about the backlogs with Boeing and Airbus. Why isn't there more of a supply base today? How did we get to this point? You would think the demand's there, people would see the economic opportunity. Why isn't there more?
I think being an aerospace supplier there's a lot that comes with it, right? There's AS 9100 certification. There are a lot of rules and regulations so that all of your products are airworthy. And so it does take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of effort to qualify as a supplier. Like I mentioned with the forgings and castings, there's three primary castings and forging houses out there that have acquired all the other casting and forging, so they've consolidated a lot of the market so that they've got the majority of the capacity. To stand up a new one that's not under those is a very daunting thing, and it's a huge investment, and you're kind of betting that demand is there and it will be there, and that customers will come to you and re-qualify you. The thing about aerospace and defense is it's cyclical. It has up moments and it has down moments. You never know when they're going to happen. So it's a pretty big investment. We've actually talked with the U.S. government about how they could invest in some of those capabilities, some of that capacity, creating some of their own foundries that would be able to be used for the U.S. defense industrial base to help support us if there was a need to surge, how we could use that as a national asset to augment what we have from the commercial market.
Generally, the U.S.'s lack of a industrial manufacturing base is a strategic disadvantage. Generally, that's needed, and especially with what you guys do. Hopefully, we're at the early stages of a renaissance of that here in the U.S. You mentioned the cost of you started to touch on the asymmetric costs of war that's going on right now. We've seen it in the Ukraine where you're using a $400,000 missile to shoot down a $4,000 drone, and that adds up quick, and it's a disadvantage to us. And you talked about how you're addressing that and how the military is adapting to that. With the advent of DOGE and the focus on cost cutting, what do you think of the cost plus model that kind of came out of World War II, where I think most of the military contracts, if I understand it correctly, are cost plus contracts where, in World War II, we were trying to get, the government was trying to get private companies to come in and manufacture for the war, and it was a risk. So they said, okay, we'll give you what it costs you plus, 5%. And that model has is still with us today, largely, as I understand. Help us understand that. Share your thoughts on that model. It seems like it would incentivize bloat. Does that need to change? How does it need to change? Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there are certain cases where a cost plus model works. When you're developing something completely new, like you want a satellite to be able to communicate with other satellites while they're operating in different orbits and be able to pass gigabytes of data per second, and nobody's ever done it before. That's a lot of risk for industry to pick up, and so or when the requirements of what it has to do are not very well known. Those are the cases where a cost plus, where you're co-developing it, makes sense, where it shares the risk. And within those contracts, you can actually set it up so it shares risk, so that it's not just incentivizing the scope creep or the cost creep, but ways to keep it in bounds. But for anything that's going into production, anything that you've been producing for years, or you have high volumes and it's a known thing that you're making, that's where a fixed price scenario really works well. For Honeywell products, a lot of our stuff is commercial. There's regulations in the government that it's FAR Part 12, which is a commercial of a type product. So if we can show that we're using these radar altimeters in all these commercial aircraft, and we're taking that radar altimeter and we're modifying it a little bit so that it'll fit into a C-130, and be able to show we're using the same production line, we're using the same suppliers, we're using the same technology. So we've saved the government millions of dollars by not having to develop all of that infrastructure to produce it. We can sell it as a commercial item, and we do that on a fixed price. That incentivizes us to keep the cost down, to continue to drive that innovation, using our commercial IRAD dollars to develop those technologies, create those production lines that can serve both the commercial and the military markets. And then, it allows us to make a profit that allows us to reinvest in those new technologies and standing up additional capacity to produce commercial and defense articles. So there is a shift definitely being pushed to go more fixed price. I think it's a little dangerous if you push everything to fixed price, because it will cause a lot of damage to industry if things don't go right on the development programs. But there has to be a better balance of how do we incentivize more efficiency, more innovation, more rapid development of new technologies, getting it fielded faster than a traditional cost plus. You lay out 1,500 different requirements that takes industry years to chew through and be able to produce. And something that's more agile, try things out, see what works, adapt it, see if that works, and evolve it more rapidly. And the other thing is, how do you incentivize industry to invest in that? So that we're putting our IRAD dollars more towards those technologies as opposed to other solutions that drive the volume and drive the revenue that business needs to survive.
When you say IRAD dollars, can you just double click on what does that stand for? Just for our listeners.
Internal research and development. So when we're investing in new technology, we invest in everything from advanced technology that's a low technology readiness level. Think about things that are 10, 20 years in the future. Technologies that are just very nascent. People are writing PhD topics on it, all the way through to products that are now being introduced into new platforms. Things like directed energy. We do a lot of things in directed energy, whether it's high energy lasers or high powered microwaves, things that can be used to take out swarms of unmanned vehicles that could be a threat, and be able to do that in a very safe manner and do it in a very low cost manner where you're talking about tens of dollars per UAV you're shooting down as opposed to a $400,000 missile.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So you're a turnaround guy. You're a guy that comes in and that's kind of been your pattern, I think. Can you share a leadership moment that where your actions had a particularly transformative impact on your team or organization? Is there something that stands out as a good story of that?
Well, turnaround and growth. I love growth. So coming into Honeywell, I mentioned I picked up a business that was on the decline for a few years. And so it was kind of bottoming out, and it was pretty maligned when across the corporation. It was an area people really didn't want to talk about. So coming in, my objective was turn it around, make it the bright spot, make it grow, make it be a spectacular part of the business. So you can call it a turnaround, you can call it growth, but really what it was is really taking a business on putting a spotlight on it, putting a lot of focus and energy on it. When I go into a company to make things better, I'm usually up against a huge challenge. And that's really what motivates me, is a challenge. I love it when they say, this can't be done, or the last 3 guys couldn't get it done. They couldn't do it. Nobody can do it. To me, that's like, all right, game on. So coming in here, it was, okay, how do I turn this business around, and how do I do it quickly? So number one thing when doing these turnarounds is get the right team on board. You got to have the right team. Number one, you only have 24 hours in a day. If you don't have the right team multiplying the hours of impact that you're having, you're going to be fighting, for every minute that you have. When you have a dozen of your key leaders who are amplifying and multiplying their 24 hours and your 24 hours, you get a lot more done. If you have only half of those leaders who are aligned and half of them are kind of pulling against you and moving in the opposite direction, you make no progress. You're kind of flat. So the first thing that I always do is make sure I've got the right team on board, get the right people into the right spots, get them aligned to what the priorities are. And you can't have more than 5 priorities, because that's all the fingers we got on one hand. But you got to be focused on what those priorities are.
So is that one? Is the right team number one? Is that
right team number one?
I would imagine, there's kind of like a critical mass point you're trying to get to. How much time do you give yourself? You come into a situation, it's always, you want to give people a chance. You got, like, how much you coming into a situation like that? It's like a lot with making those team determinations. How do you think about that time frame? Setting expectations, how do you do that practically?
I'm probably pretty generous on the time. A lot of people would come in and say 30, 60, 90 and all that. There's a lot of things that I do in that 30, 60, 90. But really, when I'm trying to get the right leaders on board and the right leaders in the right spot, I like to take some time with them. I like to invest in them. I like to get to know them, get to understand them. And if I see an issue, give them a fair chance to make adjustments, to make changes. And if that doesn't work out, then you either change people or you change people. And so in this situation, I had to change out a couple of my key leaders, and I did it about 6 months in. I did want to give some time to allow for that. During those first 6 months, it was really about getting to know the team, getting to know where we're going, getting alignment, and really focusing on getting people moving that direction. And once you got all the people moving in the direction, you can see where your outliers are. You can see who's not up to speed, or who's not moving fast enough, or who is actively pulling back the rest of the team. So I don't try to make it too fast of a decision. So about 6 months is about when I make the big team decisions on what changes I'm going to make. But up until then, I'm really assessing what is the business needs, what are the priorities, how's the team aligning to it, how are we working towards it, what are the impacts of each of the key leaders that they're having.
Is there a character trait that, if you could wave a magic wand and instill in everyone that's on your team, what's the character trait that you would wish for in everybody that you're working with?
Well, I'm a passionate person, and so having passion for what you do. We ask a lot of our leaders. We ask them to invest a lot of their time. We ask their families to sacrifice a lot of that family time to be a part of it. So if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, if you don't wake up in the morning and have a desire to get to work, you're probably not going to be a great leader on my team, because you got to have the passion for what you're doing. You got to see the energy in the person, and you got to enable and empower. And when people are empowered, they're enabled, they can do the things that they're passionate about, and it's aligned to your priorities. Get out of the way. They're going to make incredible progress. But if you're trying to cajole them and incentivize and motivate, if that's what you're spending all of your time on, you're going to have to. It takes away from what you're really trying to do, which is generate results. So that's one of the key things of what I try to do with my team to create a high performing team is make sure you got the right people, get them aligned to the priorities, and make sure that they've got the right passion for what they're doing. That will motivate them and drive them better than I can when it's intrinsic.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I had teed up, asking for your turnaround story, and then we chased the team rabbit there. Let's go back up to the top and unpack the rest of the turnaround story, please.
So for the rest of the turnaround, it's really, like I mentioned, getting focused on some key priorities that really affect growth. One of our key priorities was we had a lot of delivery challenges, performance issues that was causing impact to our customers. To me, that is just unacceptable, and you can't grow if you're not performing on your current work. So I spent a lot of time sitting down and talking to customers, understanding what the issues were, getting internal engagement and aligning plans. The key thing to gain customer trust is do what you say. If you can demonstrate that you consistently do what you say, you build trust. And when you have trust, you can build a relationship that can lead to growth. So the first step that I always do with customers is listen. I'm not broadcasting. I'm just listening to what the issues are, taking it all in, and making sure that I've got something simple that I can follow up on. I'll make some sort of small commitment that says, I will find out about this and I will send you an email tomorrow. And I come hell or high water, I will send them an email tomorrow just to demonstrate that I follow through on my word. And when you do that, you start to build that. That's the first step of that confidence building. Beyond that, you got to execute. You got to drive the execution, and you got to make those commitments, and you got to follow through on them. So I'm very careful not to make commitments that we're going to miss, because if you make a commitment and you miss it, you're toast. So being able to make those commitments, follow through on them. And we turned around our performance on a number of customers. It took a lot of effort, and it took a whole team's worth of work to drive it. But some customers who said, we've been promised this before. The last guy said that he would do that. We don't believe you. Now they're like,
Game on, right?
But now they're like, we're believers. We appreciate it. We're amazed that you were able to do it. Thank you. So it totally changed the dynamic when you can do that. So that was the second element of the turnaround, is get the performance up and listen to the customers and start to drive that. Once you start building up that customer intimacy and that relationship and that trust, and your performance is on the upswing, that's when you can start having the deeper relationship discussions of, what are your other challenges? What are the other things that are bothering you? Do you have other people that were unresponsive, like we may have been in the past, that maybe I can help you out? I've demonstrated that I have an ability to do that. What else can I help you with? Or what are your future challenges or technology needs that we could help with? Or are there things that we could co-invest in that would be beneficial to the business? Start opening the doors for those opportunities, and then bring my team in through those doors so that we can have all the follow-up engagement and discussion. And that leads to new growth. That leads to new opportunities. That leads to new business. And so we have been able to generate a lot of that with that approach, with engagements on building those relationships and being able to bring our commercial technology to a lot of new customers.
Land top technical and professional talent with Focus. Focus specializes in direct hire and contract placements, connecting you to exceptional candidates in IT, engineering, management, and more. Elevate your team with Focus. Visit getinfocus.com.
Was killing some programs that maybe were eating up a bunch of time and you weren't particularly good at, or weren't particularly profitable, was that part of it at all, or was your service lines, product lines pretty locked in? Did you have to kill anything?
Well, I mean, you have to do some pruning at times of where do you put your time and investment. even just from my own time and investment, I can only invest in so many things. Granted, when I put the attention on it, we can drive a lot of great stuff. But a lot of things I delegate. I delegate a lot. Actually, that is one of my key ways of developing leaders. Is I have specific things that I delegate to them that I see as gaps or learning opportunities. And when I delegate it to them, that's their opportunity to learn, and it takes a thing off my plate. From a product line rationalization, we're constantly rationalizing products. However, when you're serving the defense industry, you can't just say, "Hey, sorry, we're not producing those parts for those F-16s anymore. Good luck."
Yeah.
You're on the hook. So you got to be able to continue to support that, because some of these aircraft, look at the B-52, that thing will be flying for 100 years. So if you're supplying and supporting that, you can't just walk away from it and say, "Sorry, Air Force, you're going to have to figure that out." But you have to find ways that you minimize the impact on your overall business while still serving the needs of your customers.
So your business segment has grown almost $2 billion in 2 years?
Yes.
Wow.
And I will say the only thing that's been limiting the growth to that is our capacity to deliver. If I had more capacity to deliver, we would have grown even more. That's the crazy thing about it. So the demand is off the hook. The capacity is where I spend a lot of my time with suppliers, with our own factories. The integrated supply chain is where I live, next to working with our customers, because we need to make the investments in how we're delivering, and then I got to spend the time with the customers to make sure that it's getting to them, what they need when they need it.
I found your master's thesis on the importance of the win-win between OEMs and suppliers. And you seem like the type of guy who would be great to partner with to build something long-term, in the organization you lead. So that's been a theme for you for a long time, from what I can tell. So that's great.
Well, I'm impressed. You're the third person to read my thesis after my professor and my parents. So I appreciate that. But absolutely, I fully believe that the only way that you can make a supply chain successful and break out of the tit for tat game, the zero sum game that is supply chain, is to collaborate, to work together. At the end of the day, if my suppliers don't deliver, I don't deliver. So it doesn't benefit me to beat them up and to leave them destroyed. It benefits me to lift them up and to help them, because if I help them and they do better, I'm going to do better. And it goes to my customers too. I have customers that all they want to do is beat me up. They want to say I'm the worst supplier that they have. That doesn't motivate. That doesn't incentivize. That drives a very negative behavior. And it makes me go, well, I've got all these other customers over here that partner with me, that share more information with me, that work with me. Where am I going to spend my time? Where am I going to spend my effort? So I think they do a disservice to themselves. And so I learned that early on in my career. It's far better to work together to find a mutual benefit than to just be punitive and negative towards them.
The win-win is grossly underestimated. The power of it is grossly underestimated. I'm 100% with you on that. So you talked about passion. And, as a leader of your organization, you got to set the tone for passion, for energy, showing up the right way every day. And, we're human. We're frail creatures in a lot of ways. So what do you do to make sure that you show up like you need to show up? You stay on top of your game consistently. What do you do to make sure that happens?
Boatloads of caffeine. Seriously though, it does take a lot of energy. When I come in to do a turnaround, it is a commitment. It actually feels like I'm giving a part of my soul, into the project, because it is day and night, weekends, type of thing of putting in the effort, putting in the energy. If you don't go into the depths and the details, if you're not spending time with the people, you're not going to get there. I love to go walk on the floor. I love to go talk to the shop. I love to talk to, people. People were shocked. I was emailing and calling people like 5 layers down in the organization. They were all scared. They're like, why is Matt calling me? Am I in trouble? Am I going to get fired? Because previously you would never hear from the president. Yeah, at those levels. They're like, no, I know you know what's going on with this subject, and I know you know it better than anyone else. So rather than asking 5 layers to filter it and taking a day or 2 to get it, I'll just talk to you and see what's going on. And by the way, what else are we doing that's stupid that we can change and make it a lot easier? I tell you, the people closest to the action are the ones that know what's actually working and what's broken. And if you're not talking to them and you're not listening, you're not going to know. You're going to get the filtered message that says, oh yeah, your strategies are great. Well done. Little do you know, your strategies are driving like all this extra action that's totally unnecessary. So cutting out the bureaucracy, cutting all that stuff out is absolutely essential. So putting the energy towards that, you gotta spend the time. You gotta spend the hours. Exercise is just a part of my routine. I've been big into fitness since early on in my career. So always getting some exercise in first thing in the morning. My alarm is always 4 something, depending on whether it's 4:15, 30, 45, somewhere in that range, depending on the day. And
4:45 is a sleep-in day for you?
That means that I don't have a 6 a.m. meeting that day, so I get to sleep in a little bit. So being able to get the exercise in first thing in the day, if I tried to wait for later in the day, that doesn't work. I do probably over dependent on caffeine. I do like my energy drinks. I know that's not not necessarily
you got to do it.
But you got to do it. And again, like I said, you got to have the passion for it, right? If you're going to work and you dread it and it's a drudgery, your energy level is down. When you can find the passion in what you're doing, your energy level, you'll find, just keeps getting replenished. Even if 50, 60% of your work isn't fun, but you find joy in the other 30, 40% of the things that you're doing, and you get refreshed and re-energized when you get to do those things, it carries you. So that's what I look for, is what can I be passionate about? What can I impact? And especially, how can I help people? Like I view it as, I'm not just running the business. I'm in charge of a lot of people. So it was really poignant when my son asked me, "Hey Dad, why do you spend so much time at work? Why, you're clearly not very good, because it takes you like 12 hours to do what the other dads do in like 8 hours. So why do you spend so much time?" I'm like, well, son, yes, I probably am not very efficient with my time. I probably have some faults there, but I spend more hours there because what I find is, when I have more time to invest in people, I can help them. I can help more people. And as I've grown in my career, as my jobs have increased in scope and size, I found I can help more people. And so my ability to help more people within the organization, within my customers, with my suppliers, when I can make an impact, when I can help them, it drives me to one more. I can do one more. And then I can do one more. And it just keeps me going and going. Being able to help more people, whether it's personal development, professional development, spiritual. I'll even, coach people on health and exercise and, things like that, nutrition. Stay away from energy drinks. They're not good for you. That motivation to really help people is really what reinvigorates me. And when I can see that I've had an impact on someone, a positive impact, it drives me to do it again.
That feels like a good spot to land. You've been very generous with your time. I know you have a lot going on. Great to get to know you. How can folks find out more about maybe openings with your company? How to be a vendor, connect with you on the internets? And we'll put it in the show notes, but what's the best way to connect with you or your organization?
Well, LinkedIn is a great resource. I use it a lot. So being able to find me on LinkedIn, I'm a pretty active poster on there and very engaged with my network. So that's always a good avenue for direct outreach. For the company, we do have a careers website. We'll provide you the Honeywell careers website to put in there. If you poke around on the website, there's a defense and space area, which is, again, the coolest part of our business. And I would direct you to look there. We've got lots of things that we're doing, and across the entire, Honeywell Aerospace Technologies, business group, we're constantly growing. We need more engineers. We need more people in the operations and manufacturing. We need more in supply chain. So it absolutely is an area that we're looking to grow that across all of our technology fields. So we're in a growth cycle. We are looking for those great people. So come on in. We've got lots of fun things to do.
Awesome. Well, very good. Thank you so much, Matt. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, keep it real.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is powered by Onin, the staffing partner delivering real results for manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies nationwide. To learn more, visit www.oningroup.com. Until next time, keep it real.